Welcome all. This is Mandy Smith, and I am this year's director for the SheLeads Summit that Missio Alliance is putting together October 28th. And we hope that you'll be able to join us there either by coming to Pasadena, where it's going to be the live event, or coming to one of our regional venues that are happening all over the country. They're continuing to grow on our website, so be sure and check that out. If you aren't able to actually make it to one of those, you can still always live stream it yourself, watch it at home or with a small group. Wherever you happen to be. And if you can't actually make it on the day, there will be recordings available as well. So you won't miss out if you can't actually make it on the 28th in any of those ways. Well, I am sitting here with Nancy Ortberg, and I wanted to have a little bit of a chat to her. She's one of our plenary presenters for the gathering on the 28th of October. And so tell us a little bit about yourself. I think many people are already familiar with your name, Nancy, but tell us what you would like us to know about you today.
Sure. Well, I'm a native Californian. John and I have been back in California for the last 14 years in the Menlo Park Bay Area. And about 2 years ago, I took over the leadership of a nonprofit organization called Transforming the Bay with Christ. It was started about a year before I came on with a group of Christian businessmen and a group of church pastors to see if we could help catalyze a holistic gospel movement in the Bay Area. So I've been with them for about 2 years, and it's a really exciting time and place to do this work.
Wonderful that you're able to be a part of that. I remember, I think it was probably about 10 years ago, I drove all the way from Cincinnati to Chicago just for the day to come, and you and Nancy Beach were putting together a gathering for women, specifically for women leaders. And I was just so hungry to be a part of that conversation that I drove there just for the one day, and it was so wonderful to be a part of that. So you've been a part of this conversation for a very long time, and I can tell that you have a heart for actually encouraging women into that place. So tell us a little bit about why this is even an important conversation to be having, the one that we're preparing for and the one that's going on in the broader church about what it looks like for men and women to lead the church together.
It's a great question. I think the most important thing to remember is this is what God always had in mind. Always had in mind a community of diversity, of gender, of age, of ethnic diversity to be leading together and leading out of community. And there are certainly issues to men and women leading together in community. So the more we can break down those barriers and talk about the obstacles, with the vision in mind of what's possible if we push through those and really begin to be the church that God always had in mind.
That's beautiful. I know one of my favorite writers on leadership is Edwin Friedman, and he talks about the anxious leader, and that somehow to set aside the anxiety and to step into our imagination is where the really great leadership comes from. And I know that,
well said.
Yeah, the gender conversation has so much anxiety in it, and it's become so fraught with just dissension that it's so hard to really have a conversation about it without it becoming some kind of a conflict. And so I love how you're kind of broadening our imaginations and helping us to step out of that reptilian kind of survival mode, and that's so reactionary and fearful, and into this different kind of space that's very scriptural and beautiful.
Right. And Edwin's book, Failure of Nerve, is one of the best books I've ever read on leadership. And I love the way you're putting it. It's we can lead out of anxiety or out of imagination. The problem with leading out of anxiety is our bodies do such a good job of pushing that to the unconscious level that most of us would say, I'm not anxious. That's the wrong answer. The right answer is actually, yes, you are. And here's what it looks like in your personality type. So how do we bring that to the table and in humility offer even our anxiety to this?
Wow.
And isn't it part of why the Bible is full of don't be afraid?
Yeah.
Because fear becomes our biggest obstacle.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. Well, I think we'll have a chance to talk a little more about that on the day on October 28th, and I can't wait to see what you have to share with us, or to hear what you have to share with us. So what are you hoping for a day like this and for the broader conversation that's happening in the church at the moment?
Well, off the top of my head, I think about what can a gathering like this do and what can it not do? A gathering like this can primarily serve in the greater ecosystem of creating this kind of a culture, a moment in time where we come together and we get inspired and encouraged and perhaps a little bit of training. What needs to happen, even before we get there, is the commitment to say, what will I do on the backside of all that encouragement and envisioning that will move this in the right direction? And I think one of the things that gets in our way is we keep thinking in terms of what enormous change that will match how I felt when I went to the conference will I be capable of? I'm not sure that's the right question. It presumes too much. But what are the small steps I can take on the backside of this great vision that collectively over time is really going to create momentum in my life and in my community around
that? I like that. Yeah. I think we often use the metaphor of drinking from a fire hose when we go to a Christian conference or event. Yeah, and it can be overwhelming. And so we've built...
It's part of the reason why none of us do it. We don't literally drink from fire hoses because it's not a good way to get fluid. It's a bad way. Yeah.
Yeah, it would knock you over. Yeah. And so I don't want this to be just one more event where we go home with a bunch of notes that we don't actually have any time to think through once we get home. So we've built in times for conversation and reflection in between the sessions so that people can talk and pray. And my hope is that by the time they go home, and I know so many of the folks who are coming just don't have the kind of lives where they have, the time to do that kind of processing.
That's right.
So my
most of us have been to conferences where those spaces actually were more profound than even what we heard on stage.
Oh, yes. Yes. So my prayer is that by the end of the event, folks will be leaving with maybe just one new way of seeing or one action step forward, one way that they're leaving something behind that's been unhealthy or one way that they're stepping into something new that feels hopeful. And so my longing is just for healing to happen in human hearts around this issue. And I believe, what is the church without us? The church is only made up of human beings. And so as we personally heal, I believe that God is doing healing for his beautiful ecclesia as well. So
until the robots are ready to take over for us, we have to do it. There you go.
That's good. Well, thank you so much, Nancy, for joining us.
I'm looking forward to seeing everyone.
Yes, can't wait to see you in October in California. So please, all you folks who are listening, please do consider joining us in person in Pasadena or at a regional venue or online by streaming it. Thank you so much, Nancy, and we hope.
You're welcome.